afternoon to you all, and once again welcome to this session. This is an interactive session where we get to learn some basic concepts of R software. And if you're new here, my name is Defa Ansokal, and if you have not liked our page, kindly do go to Facebook and follow us at Beyond Analysis, and also go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel at Beyond Analysis. So today we are here with data structures in R, and we are going to look majorly on R vectors. And as we all know that R has 6 basic data structures, and these include frames, data frames, lists, arrays, factors, and vectors. And we are only going to major our discussion for today on vectors. And these data structures in R, they can either be of homogeneous or of heterogeneous. By homogeneous, I mean they are of the same data type, they contain same data type, while by heterogeneous, I mean they contain different data types. So to begin with vectors, these are the simplest data structures that are found in R. They are the sequence of elements of the same basic data type. These types can be either of numeric, integer, complex, character, and logical. And so by the end of this session, we should be able to answer the following question. We should also be able to know how to create vectors in R. We should also be able to find the different types of vectors in R. We should be able to know how to combine R vectors, and we should be able to understand what is coercion in R. So to begin with how to create vectors in R, there are several different ways of creating vectors in R, but we'll measure on the 3 basic ones. You can create vectors in R by use of C function, and when you do that, this is what you get as your output. Another way of creating vectors in R, you can do that by using assign function. And when you do that, this is the output. And lastly, you can create vectors in R by use of operator, and this mostly applies to creation of vector of integers class. And when you do that, this is what you get as output. So in the next thing that you should also be able to know is different types of vectors in R. R has different types of vectors, and these vectors can be of either numeric class, of character class, of logical class, of complex class, and also of integer class. And we can do that by creating our vector and be able to check its class. And when we create our vector, we have our vector x, and we also have to look at the class of x. The most beautiful thing with R is that whenever you type a function, it will give you what it does. So this time we're going to use class function, and when we run that chunk, we'll find that our function gives us x to be of class numeric. And the same applies to character vectors. These are vectors which contains character data types. And we also, when we use type of function, it also works in the same manner as class function. It will give us our vector to be of class character. The same applies to integer. It will give us our vector to be of class integer. And the same thing applies to logical. Our vector will be of class logical. And the same applies to complex, and our vector will be of class complex. But in this case, we receive a warning which is telling us that the imaginary part discarded in coercion. We'll be able to look at what is coercion in our next step. So before we look at coercion, we have to learn how to combine vectors in R. And for you to combine 2 vectors in R to get the third vector, you will incorporate the use of C function. So we have 2 vectors. We have vector x and we have vector y. So we need to combine these 2 vectors to get our third vector, vector z. And we can do that by use of C function. And when we do that, we'll be able to say that this C function will combine the values of vector x and together with the values of vector y to return the values of vector z. So we can see that the values of vector x were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the values of vector y were 8 all the way to 20, and they are combined to give us the values of vector z, which is all these numbers. So the next thing that you're able to look at is coercion in R. As mentioned earlier, vectors only hold elements of the same data type. And if there is more than one data type in a given vector, the C function will convert the element. And this conversion is what is called coercion. And this conversion takes place from the lower to higher type. And by that I mean from logical to integer, then to double, then to complex, and lastly to character. And by example, this is what I mean. Let's say we have our vector x and it has different data types. We can see it has those of character, we have those of complex class, those of numeric, and those of logical. And when we look at the type of this vector x, we'll get that it is of type character. It has converted them all the way to the highest type, which is character. So up to here, I now believe that we are able to create vectors in R. And just a recap, we can create vectors in R by using C function, assign function, and also parameter. And we can also be able to define different types of vectors in R, that is numeric, integer, logical, complex, and we can also be able to look at their class by use of class function and also type of function. And another thing, we are now also able to combine our vectors in R. If you are given 3 vectors or more, we can be able to combine them in order to get a new vector. And we have also learned about coercion in R. And so in our next video, we'll be able to answer the 3 questions that we did not look at. And up to here, this marks the end of this session. And in case you have any question, you can always send it to our comment section. We'll be happy to answer it. And also, if you're not able to access this video, you can go to the website of rstudioconnect.com. You'll be able to look at our document. It has been uploaded there, and you can also be able to read and follow through. And if you feel you like this session, and you like this content, and you also like to always get this kind of content whenever we upload our videos, kindly don't forget to subscribe and share with friends. Thank you for this session, and thank you for your time, and thank you also for choosing to be part of us. Do have a nice day, and see you in the next